Killing a monster is never as simple as the movies make it seem. Sometimes, the monster isn't a thing you can see, or touch, or even name. Sometimes, it's a shadow that slips through the cracks in your life, a whisper that curls around your thoughts when you're alone in the dark. I learned that the hard way, in a house I never should have entered, on a night I'll never forget. I was 23, broke, and desperate for a place to live. The ad was simple: room for rent, quiet neighborhood, all utilities included, $300 per month. It sounded too good to be true, but I was too tired to care. I called the number, and a woman with a soft, tired voice answered. Her name was Mrs. Callahan. She said the room was still available, and I could come by that evening to see it. Willow Lane was a narrow street lined with old maples and sagging porches. The house was at the end, a two-story Victorian with peeling paint and a crooked fence. The porch light was on, casting a yellow glow over the steps. I hesitated at the gate, feeling the weight of the house pressing down on me, but I told myself it was just nerves. I needed a place to stay. I needed this to work. Mrs. Callahan met me at the door. She was small and thin, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The hallway smelled of old wood and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers. The wallpaper was faded, the floorboards creaked under my feet. She showed me the room upstairs. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the backyard. "It's quiet here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You'll have your privacy. I don't go upstairs much anymore." I nodded, trying to ignore the way her words made my skin prickle. I told her I'd take it. She handed me a key, her hand trembling just a little. "If you need anything, I'm downstairs," she said. "Just try not to make too much noise at night. The walls are thin." That first night, I unpacked my things and tried to settle in. The house was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's pressing against your ears. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the window. I must have drifted off, because I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. They were slow, deliberate, moving past my door and down the stairs. I sat up, heart pounding, listening. The footsteps stopped, and the house was silent again. I told myself it was Mrs. Callahan, maybe going to the kitchen for a glass of water. But something about the way the steps moved, so slow, so heavy, made me uneasy. The next morning, I found Mrs. Callahan in the kitchen, making tea. She looked tired, her eyes ringed with dark circles. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, and I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I thought I heard someone walking around last night." She didn't look at me. "Old houses make a lot of noise," she said. "You get used to it." I wanted to believe her. I really did. The days passed quietly. I found a job at a coffee shop downtown, started to settle into a routine. But the nights were different. Every night, around 2 or 3 in the morning, I'd hear the footsteps. Always the same, slow, heavy, moving past my door and down the stairs. Sometimes I'd hear the front door creak open, then close again. Once, I thought I heard whispering, low and urgent, but when I pressed my ear to the door, there was nothing. I started sleeping with the light on. It made me feel safer, though I couldn't have said why. I told myself it was just the house settling, or maybe Mrs. Callahan moving around. But I never heard her go back upstairs. And every morning, when I saw her in the kitchen, she looked more and more exhausted. One night, I decided to stay up and see what was happening. I sat on my bed, the lamp on, listening. The house was silent, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then, just after 2, I heard the footsteps. They started at the far end of the hallway, moving slowly toward my door. I held my breath, heart hammering in my chest. The steps stopped outside my room. I could hear breathing, slow, ragged, like someone struggling to catch their breath. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking too badly to hold it. The doorknob rattled, just a little, as if someone was testing it. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. Then, just as suddenly, the footsteps moved on, down the stairs. I heard the front door creak open, then close. I sat there, frozen, until the sun started to rise. The next morning, I confronted Mrs. Callahan. "Who was in the house last night?" I demanded. "I heard someone outside my door." She looked at me, her eyes wide and frightened. "You heard it too?" She whispered that I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "It started after my husband died. I thought it was just grief, or maybe my mind playing tricks on me. But then I started hearing the footsteps. Every night, always at the same time. Sometimes I see him, standing at the end of the hallway. But it's not him. Not really. It's something else." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head. "No one ever believes me. They always leave after a few weeks. I thought maybe you'd be different." I wanted to leave. I wanted to pack my things and run, but I couldn't move. I felt trapped, like the house was holding me in place. That night, I locked my door and pushed the dresser in front of it. I left the light on, clutching my phone in one hand. I lay there, listening, waiting. The footsteps came, right on schedule. They stopped outside my door, and this time, I heard whispering, soft, urgent, like someone pleading. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. The doorknob rattled, harder this time. I could hear breathing, so close it felt like it was right in my ear. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to stop. Then, suddenly, the footsteps moved on, down the stairs. I heard the front door open, then slam shut. The house was silent that I didn't sleep at all. When the sun rose, I packed my things and left. I didn't say goodbye to Mrs. Callahan. I didn't look back that I found a new place, a tiny studio apartment with thin walls and noisy neighbors. I didn't care. I just wanted to feel safe again. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear footsteps in the hallway. I still sleep with the light on. There are some stories you only tell in the daylight, when the world feels safe and the shadows are just shadows. But there are other stories, the kind that linger in the corners of your mind, the kind that make you question what's real and what's just your imagination. This is one of those stories. I've never told anyone the whole truth about what happened that summer, not even my closest friends. But I remember every detail, every sound, every breath. And I still sleep with the lights on. It was the summer after my first year of college, and I'd taken a job as a night security guard at a construction site on the edge of town. The pay was terrible, but I needed the money, and the hours meant I could spend my days however I wanted. The site was a half-finished office building, all steel beams and concrete floors, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. During the day, it was a hive of activity, workers shouting, machines rumbling, the air thick with dust and sweat. But at night, it was a different world. Empty, silent. Waiting. My shift started at midnight and ended at 6. I'd arrive just before the last of the workers left, sign in at the little trailer that served as the site office, and make my rounds with a heavy flashlight and a battered walkie-talkie. The first few nights were uneventful. I'd walk the perimeter, check the locks on the gates, shine my light into the shadows. Sometimes I'd find a stray cat or a raccoon nosing through the trash, but nothing more. But then, about a week in, things started to change. It was a Tuesday night, just after 2 in the morning. I was sitting in the trailer, drinking bad coffee and flipping through an old paperback when I heard a noise outside. It was faint, barely more than a whisper, but it was enough to make me sit up and listen. I turned off the radio and waited, holding my breath. There it was again, a soft scraping, like something dragging across the gravel. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. The site was silent, the only sound the distant hum of traffic on the highway. I walked around the trailer, shining my light into the darkness. Nothing. Just piles of lumber, stacks of drywall, the skeleton of the building looming against the sky that I told myself it was nothing, maybe a stray animal or the wind. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next night, the same thing happened. A noise outside, soft and insistent. This time, when I stepped out, I caught a glimpse of something moving at the far end of the site, a shadow, quick and silent, slipping between the stacks of concrete blocks. I called out, my voice echoing in the empty lot. "Who's there?" No answer. Just the wind, rattling the chain-link fence that I radioed the site manager. Told him I thought someone might be trying to break in. He told me to keep an eye out, but not to do anything stupid. "If you see anyone, call the cops," he said. "Don't try to be a hero." I nodded, but I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like prey. The nights blurred together. Every shift, I'd hear the noises, scraping, shuffling, sometimes a low, guttural growl that made the hair on my arms stand up. I started carrying a crowbar, just in case. I stopped reading, stopped listening to music. I spent my nights pacing the site, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other, heart pounding in my chest. One night, just after 3, I saw it that I was walking the perimeter, checking the locks on the back gate, when I felt it, a prickling on the back of my neck, like someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, shining my light into the darkness, and there it was. At first, I thought it was a man, tall, thin, dressed in black. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it wasn't a man at all. It was too tall, its limbs too long, its movements too smooth. Its face was pale, almost featureless, with eyes that glowed faintly in the beam of my flashlight. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I felt rooted to the spot, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. Then, slowly, it raised one hand, long, thin fingers curling in the air, and pointed at me. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. One moment I was frozen, the next I was sprinting across the gravel, my boots slipping, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was inside the trailer, the door locked, the lights on. I sat there until sunrise, crowbar clutched in my hands, every light in the trailer blazing. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. When the site manager arrived, I tried to tell him what I'd seen. He laughed it off, said I was probably just tired, maybe saw a deer or a homeless guy. "You're working too many nights," he said. "Take a break." But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew it was still out there. I quit that day. I packed my things and left, never looking back. I found a new job, one with normal hours, surrounded by people and noise and light. But sometimes, late at night, I still see it in my dreams, the night watcher standing in the shadows, waiting. And I still sleep with the lights on. Some stories don't start with a bang or a scream. Some stories begin with a whisper, a flicker at the edge of your vision, a feeling that something is just a little bit off. This is one of those stories. I was 16, and I thought I knew everything. I thought the world was safe, that monsters were just stories told to scare children. I was wrong that IT was the summer before my junior year of high school, and my parents had just moved us into a new house on the outskirts of town. It was an old place, built in the 1920s, with creaky floors and drafty windows and a backyard that sloped down to a line of tangled trees. My room was at the back of the house, with a window that looked out over the yard. I liked it at first. It felt private, like my own little world. The first few weeks were uneventful. I spent my days exploring the neighborhood, riding my bike, hanging out with friends. At night, I'd lie in bed and listen to the crickets, the distant hum of cars on the highway, the occasional bark of a dog. It was peaceful, safe. But then, one night, I woke up to the sound of tapping at my window. It was soft, almost gentle, like someone drumming their fingers against the glass. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked out. At first, I didn't see anything, just the dark yard, the trees swaying in the wind. I told myself it was a branch, or maybe a bird. I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up, staring at the window, but there was nothing there. I got up, pulled back the curtain, and pressed my face to the glass. The yard was empty. The trees were still. I went back to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I stopped reading, stopped listening to music. I spent my nights pacing the site, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other, heart pounding in my chest. One night, just after 3, I saw that I was walking the perimeter, checking the locks on the back gate, when I felt it, a prickling on the back of my neck, like someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, shining my light into the darkness, and there it was. At first, I thought it was a man, tall, thin, dressed in black. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it wasn't a man at all. It was too tall, its limbs too long, its movements too smooth. Its face was pale, almost featureless, with eyes that glowed faintly in the beam of my flashlight. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I felt rooted to the spot, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. Then, slowly, it raised one hand, long, thin fingers curling in the air, and pointed at me. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. One moment I was frozen, the next I was sprinting across the gravel, my boots slipping, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was inside the trailer, the door locked, the lights on. I sat there until sunrise, crowbar clutched in my hands, every light in the trailer blazing. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. When the site manager arrived, I tried to tell him what I'd seen. He laughed it off, said I was probably just tired, maybe saw a deer or a homeless guy. "You're working too many nights," he said. "Take a break." But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew it was still out there. I quit that day. I packed my things and left, never looking back. I found a new job, one with normal hours, surrounded by people and noise and light. But sometimes, late at night, I still see it in my dreams, the night watcher, standing in the shadows, waiting. And I still sleep with the lights on. That night, I slept with the light on, the door locked, the curtains drawn tight. But the tapping came again, louder this time. I lay in bed, frozen, listening to the soft, insistent rhythm. Then the whispering started, the same strange song, the same sad melody that I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, grabbed my phone, and crept to the window. I pulled back the curtain, heart pounding, and snapped a picture. The flash lit up the yard, and for a split second, I saw her, closer this time, her face pressed against the glass, her eyes wide and empty. I screamed, stumbling back, dropping my phone. My parents came running, but by the time they got there, the window was empty. I showed them the picture, but it was just a blur of light and shadow. "It's nothing," my mom said, hugging me tight. "Just a trick of the light." But I knew what I'd seen. The next day, I did some research. I went to the library, dug through old newspapers, looking for anything about the house, the neighborhood, the little girl. I found an article from the 1950s, a story about a family who'd lived in the house, a little girl who'd gone missing one summer night. They'd searched the woods, dragged the creek, but they never found her. The article said she was last seen playing in the yard, wearing a white dress. I showed the article to my parents, but they just shook their heads. "That was a long time ago," my dad said. "It doesn't mean anything." But I couldn't let it go. I started sleeping in the living room, the lights on, the TV playing quietly in the background. The tapping stopped, but I still felt her presence, like she was waiting for me to come back. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. I sat up, listening, my heart pounding. The footsteps stopped outside the living room door. I held my breath, waiting. The door creaked open, and for a moment, I saw her, standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and empty, her dress stained with mud and leaves. She didn't move. She just stared at me, her mouth moving silently, as if she was trying to speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, frozen, as she faded away, dissolving into the shadows. After that, the tapping stopped. The whispering stopped. But I never slept in that room again. I never opened that window. And I never, ever turned off the light. Years later, after we moved away, I went back to the house. It was empty, the windows boarded up, the yard overgrown. I stood at the edge of the property, staring up at my old window, and for a moment, I thought I saw her, just a flicker, a shadow behind the glass. I turned and walked away, the sun warm on my back, the world bright and safe. But I still sleep with the lights on. Some stories end with a scream, others with a whisper. But the ones that stay with you, the ones that haunt your dreams and make you question every shadow, are the ones that never really end at all. They linger, like a chill in the air, a flicker at the edge of your vision, a memory you can't quite shake. After those 3 nights, 3 stories that left me sleeping with the lights on, I thought I could move on. I thought I could leave the fear behind. But fear has a way of following you, of finding you when you least expect it. It was a year after the last story, and I was living in a new apartment, a tiny place on the 3rd floor of an old building downtown. The walls were thin, the neighbors loud, but I didn't care. I liked the noise, the constant hum of life all around me. It made me feel safe, like nothing could sneak up on me in the dark. But the dark always finds a way. It started with small things. A cold spot in the hallway, a door that wouldn't stay closed, the feeling that someone was watching me when I was alone. I told myself it was nothing, just the quirks of an old building. But then, one night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in my living room. I lay in bed, heart pounding, listening. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, moving from the kitchen to the window, then back again. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking too badly to hold it. I listened, frozen, as the footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. The doorknob rattled, just a little, as if someone was testing it. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to stop. After what felt like hours, the footsteps moved away, fading into the silence. The next morning, I found the living room window open, the curtains billowing in the breeze. I knew I'd locked it before I went to bed. I checked the locks on every door and window, but nothing seemed out of place. I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The nights grew worse. Every night, the footsteps returned, always at the same time, always stopping outside my door. Sometimes I'd hear whispering, low and urgent, like someone pleading. Other times, I'd see a shadow flicker across the wall, gone before I could turn on the light. I started sleeping with the lights on, every lamp in the apartment blazing. I bought a nightlight for the hallway, a little plastic thing shaped like a moon. It made me feel like a child, but I didn't care. I just wanted to feel safe. But the fear only grew. One night, I woke to the sound of someone calling my name. It was soft, almost gentle, but it sent a chill down my spine. I sat up, listening, my heart pounding. The voice came again, closer this time, right outside my door. I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone, anyone, but the screen was black, the battery dead. I stumbled out of bed, flicking on every light as I went. The apartment was empty, the windows locked, the doors secure. But the fear lingered, thick and heavy, pressing against my chest. I called my parents the next day, told them what was happening. They listened, their voices tight with worry. "Maybe you should come home for a while," my mom said. "Just until you feel better." But I didn't want to run. I didn't want to let the fear win. So I stayed. I bought new locks, new lights, anything to keep the darkness at bay. But the footsteps kept coming. The whispering grew louder, the shadows deeper. One night, I decided I'd had enough. I sat in the living room, every light on, a baseball bat in my hands. I waited, listening, my heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps came, slow and steady, moving from the kitchen to the window, then back again. I stood up, bat raised, ready to face whatever was haunting me. The footsteps stopped. The room was silent, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. I waited, breathless, every muscle tense. Then, slowly, the temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath, white and misty in the air. The lights flickered, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. I stood there, frozen, the bat heavy in my hands. I could hear breathing, slow, ragged, like someone struggling to catch their breath. I swung the bat, blindly, but hit nothing. The breathing grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was right in my ear. Then, suddenly, the lights snapped back on. The room was empty. The temperature returned to normal. I was alone. I dropped the bat, my hands shaking. I sat on the floor, tears streaming down my face, and waited for the sun to rise. After that night, the footsteps stopped. The whispering faded. The shadows retreated. But the fear never left. It lingered, a constant presence, a reminder that the darkness is never really gone. I still sleep with the lights on. I probably always will. But I've learned something I wish I'd known all those years ago. The monsters aren't always out there, lurking in the shadows. Sometimes they're inside us, feeding on our fear, our loneliness, our pain. And sometimes the only way to fight them is to face them, to stand in the light and refuse to let the darkness win.